Greetings, noble ones. I am Sir Eoth, your guide through these tales. In our final steps into the scorched lands of Natlan, the fog of mystery has begun to lift. What was once shrouded now stands clearer than ever, our path having guided us through the hallowed grounds of the sacred city of Tollan. Have you found yourself ensnared by the tale of our little one, bound by fate to Xbalanque, Xiuhcoatl, and the Sage of the Stolen Flame, whose true identity has at least been revealed? Have you pondered upon Huitzilopochtli, the weight of the little one's choice and the consequences it may bear? Have your eyes wandered toward a distant, mist-veiled isle, its presence haunting the horizon? It's Marijivari, I called it in the last video. Where are my internet points? Or perhaps, have you clicked on this video because you thought the thumbnail was interesting and I am already asking too many questions? As always, welcome to Secrets of Natlan, the series in which we traverse the hidden past of Teyvat's nations and uncover their unknown history, which I deliver to you in an immersive narrative. This tale unfolds in 3 segments, and the one you are currently on is its final chapter. Should you wish to fully grasp the depth of Natlan's past, I encourage you to take a look at the previous 2 parts in order to truly grasp the depth of Natlan's history. As is our noble custom, procure a flagon of the finest drink, a feast most hearty, and settle thyself well, for the story beckons us onward. Our journey does not begin in Natlan, nor even in Teyvat. It reaches back beyond the reckoning of mortals, over 6,000 years ago, to a time when the notion of Teyvat was yet unformed, before the heavenly principles took hold, before the firmament itself was sealed beneath a false sky. Balance reigned supreme. The Light Realm and the Void Realm stood in opposition, and only the dragons and vishaps roamed the land, governed by the will of their 7 sovereigns, each an elemental lord of their own dominion. At the center of it all stood the primeval Dragon King, most likely Xbalanque, who dreamt of leading his kin beyond the bounds of the Light Realm, seeking distant stars upon which his people might flourish. Yet, they were not the only ones who beheld this world with wonder. A celestial scribe, belonging to a higher order forbidden from interfering with mortal civilization, cast her gaze upon Teyvat. Stricken by its beauty, she sought to bestow upon Xbalanque the gift of the boundless night sky, offering him the stars in exchange for forsaking his kind. He promptly refused. For him, the journey to the cosmos could only be undertaken together. She vowed to return, and return she did, but upon her arrival, the Light Realm she once knew had been broken, splintered into 7 elements, shackled by the laws of the heavenly principles, and veiled beneath a false sky. In defiance of her order, she stepped into this world, discarding her former self and assuming the guise of a young girl. There is one such figure in our time who mirrors this being. Alice, the enigmatic outlander, and bound by the laws of Teyvat. She who tells the tales of those erased by Irminsul, whose voice carries the weight of distant knowledge. It is no coincidence that only those untouched by Teyvat's constraints, Alice and Dainsleif, are entrusted to narrate the stories of those beyond or forgotten by this world. But let us return to the past. 3,000 years ago, when the tale of Coquitao unfolded. This legend belongs to the masters of the night wind, brought by grim birds in service of the moon with a broken face. Their tales are woven from 3 silver strands of moonlight, tracing back to an era following the death of the 3 moon sisters, or at least 2 of them, according to other tales. Coquitao was a warrior outlander, one who predated the tribes of men. His homeland, they say, lay beneath a distant midnight, where a frigid sun cast its pale glow. By all accounts, he was Khaenri'ahn, his existence intertwined with the Eclipse dynasty, the so-called Dark Sun, which arose as the crimson moon faded into obscurity. What is a dark sun if not a frigid sun, let alone a frost moon? He wandered the land, bearing a stone club named Makana, bound to the will of the deity of the dog days. His charge? To hunt those who had forsaken death itself, to bring them an end beyond reversal, veiling them in freezing storms. He was not alone. By his side stood Nogwal, a shapeshifter from a land of endless fire, perhaps none other than Marijivari. But fate is ever treacherous. Upon the slaying of the final immortal, Coquitao sought to see his soul return to its homeland. The deity he served refused, and in that moment, treachery struck. Nagual, the very one he called companion, turned upon him, his black blade severing Coquitao's head from his body. Yet, death did not claim him. He had been cursed with immortality, bound to wander aimlessly, his purpose stolen from him. But vengeance found an ally among the heavens. The mistress of celestial stars, perhaps the Shade of Life herself, or the very Frost Moon, was angered by the fate of her hero. She granted him the strength to enact his retribution. For many nights, primitive men whispered of a headless figure, Makana still in hand, his form shifting into black spirits, an omen of nightmares and inspiration alike. When he finally found Nagual, revealing by an oasis, raising Makana high, he struck, brutally shattering his skull. But it was not enough. He struck once more, then again, until the traitor's body was cast into the flames of the homeland from which it came. A fitting end for a demon of hell if such he was. Yet vengeance is but a hollow feast. Though he had outlived his betrayers and the tricksters who wronged him, he was still consumed by an icy rage burning eternal, as if he had become the cold sun of his homeland. To this day, legends tell of his silhouette still wandering beneath dead moonlight, his fury undying. But as Coquitao's tale reached its grim conclusion, another saga unfolded in Natlan. At the same time, still around 3,000 years ago, the ancient era of dragon civilization was taking place. Their civilization replaced the then perfect united first civilization of humans, who had been punished for their arrogance by the heavenly principles in their attempt to free themselves from fate. Yes, it was the same humans who were part of Enkanomia. There you go, I couldn't stop myself from mentioning Enkanomia again. Humans, in their punishment, were reduced to primitive beings, with dragons seizing this opportunity to claim dominion over Natlan. From the heart of the great volcano of Tollan, the dragons forged their sanctuary, the sacred city of Tollan. Within its depth, shielded by a false sky of their own making, their wisdom flourished once more as the first bastion of draconic civilization since the fall of the race at the hand of the usurper from the sky. In real-life legends, Tollan is the birthplace of the first people where language and divine knowledge is bestowed upon them. To enter the Dragon City, one must take the leap into the volcano itself, a trial echoing the sacrifice of Nana Huatzin, the Aztec deity who cast himself into the flames to become the sun. The sacred city was governed by 13 sovereign rulers, dragon lords as I shall name them to distinguish them from their elemental sovereigns. Of these, the first stood above all, feared even by his peers. The dragon lord you are most familiar with, Kuuvahki, originates from this era. From this city, settlements rose, among them Xiuhcoatl and Natlan, the latter being tied to worrying and gruesome tales of Men of Lithin, which I will cover and bring my own theories on in time. Among them was Kukulkan, who would become the Sage of the Stolen Flame, brother to Xiuhcoatl himself, one who had not only witnessed the war against the heavens, but had taken part in it. Despite the bestial consonance of dragons, they were creatures of profound sophistication. Their society reveled in modern luxuries, intricate craftsmanship, and high-stakes politics. The 13 Dragon Lords would deliberate in chambers where the fate of their kind was decided. Predicting humanity's rapid growth, dragons turned to clandestine observation, pulling unseen strings to maintain control over the primitive men. In the meantime, Xiuhcoatl, seeking a new course for his kin, pioneered the development of a stellar craft alongside a select few, guided by the unparalleled wisdom of his brother. Kukulkan, the mastermind behind star forging, assisted in the birth of a marvel, Astral assemblages, highly pressurized spheres of energy, likened to the assembly of moons. These were no ordinary constructs, for dragons had once forged the very remnants of the ancient moons scattered across Natlan's skies. In awe of his brother's achievement, Xiuhcoatl proclaimed that even Nibelung would have bowed in reverence to Kukulkan, for their unreachable stars were now within hand's reach. Within the artificial confines of Tollan, where a false sky shielded them from the watchful heavens, the dragons embarked on another grand endeavor enabled by the astral assemblages, Huitzilopochtli, the doomsday device designed for mutual annihilation. And while I have covered this creation before, new revelations have surfaced, ones that shift our understanding. Xiuhcoatl believed his craft would endure eternally, ensuring the undying radiance of his primal flame. He crowned himself creator, shaper, and forger of all names, the very progenitor of soil and gold. As Daya might take issue with that last claim, though you could chalk it up to an excess of zeal. Eventually, the Dragon Lords claimed the right to hunt humanity, and fate struck back. Two of their own fell to human hands. Following this event, the Fourth Lord ceased attending the council, claiming a breakthrough in his research, one tied, I suspect, to dragonkind's devolution into the Saurians, and the enigmatic conversion of life into phlogiston, all linking back to Huitzilopochtli. Far from the sacred city, ancient texts recount how dragons experimented upon their devolved kin, seeking a way to restore lost wisdom. A solution was found, though it came at a dire cost. Saurians blessed by the Pyro-Sovereign's lineage could regain knowledge, their bodies surging with accelerated growth, but the price was steep. They would soon regress into a form even more grotesque than before, with even less intelligence to spare. A discovery fitting for the fourth Dragon Lord. He and Dottore would no doubt become best friends. The fourth Dragon Lord's name bore an interesting connection to two others. First is Ixled, simplified from Ish-Ushul Tsib-Boron-Chu-Ulil. Once the ninth Lord and sovereign of Xiuhcoatl, she would be deceived and overthrown by Ochkan later on, using her territory to give rise to Ochkan Natlan. Her name in Mayan Sertal contains Chu-Ulil, signifying the essence of the soul, which is divided in 13 parts. A curious parallel to the 13 Dragon Lords themselves, which I believe is why every Dragon Lord is referred to as CL within the records, using Chu-Ulil as honorifics more than a part of their names. The fourth Dragon Lord's full name reveals a chilling familiarity. Ak-Auk Kumilal Kan Chu-Ulil. The name starts with Akkao, and he was described as decadent and disdainful. Akkao himself is sustained by phlogiston, which was a part of the research of the fourth Dragon Lord. Their tie is reinforced by Ixled referring to our Akkao as an old colleague of hers. This effectively puts the goofy Akkao right below sovereign level. The council, faced with two fallen lords and one in seclusion, the remaining 10 debated a motion of neutralization, a calculated purge of human settlements to curb their unchecked expansion. Yet they hesitated, fearing it would unify humanity against them by giving humans a common enemy, the motion failing to gather enough votes as a result. During their debate, their choice of words implied that they predicted humanity's nature, wishing to use them to elevate their species and reclaim the land for themselves once more, creating an interesting parallel to Men of Lithin. Kukulkan stood in opposition to their growing tyranny. For this, the council turned against him, stripping him of his authority without contest. He had foreseen the dragon's downfall, understanding that violence alone would not sustain their race. In his wisdom, he knew that salvation for both races could only be found by exchanging their knowledge, prompting him to steal a part of the phlogiston seed from Xiuhcoatl's science, parting for a land untouched by the filth of the abyss. Among humanity, Kukulkan found purpose. He imparted knowledge of phlogiston, teaching its language, its vast potential, and the intricate balance it upheld. Yet, humanity, as ever, wielded power as a weapon, waging war upon itself rather than ascending toward enlightenment. Meanwhile, Xiuhcoatl, longing for his lost brother, named Tollan's greatest automaton in his honor. But time marched forward. 1,000 years passed, or from our perspective, 2,000 years ago, and war erupted. Dragons launched full-scale attacks against humans, only to meet fierce resistance. One name rose above all others: Xbalanque, the warrior bright as the sun, who rallied the scattered tribes against their oppressors. Kukulkan, now deeply intertwined with humanity, sought to bridge the gap between the two species, bringing forth his own child, Xiuhcoatl. A prodigy beyond compare, Xiuhcoatl bested even grown mishaps in his youth. Xiuhcoatl himself, upon seeing him, would be unable to discern whether Xiuhcoatl was human or dragon. His fate was one of unparalleled consequences and of a promising future for a new race. In Tollan, the council met once more, this time condemning the 8th Dragon Lord, the priestess of floral candles, for treason. She had taken in a human girl, raising her as a daughter and even commissioning a weapon for her, crafted by dragon hands. But when the girl allied with Xbalanque, the council deemed her guardian guilty. Only the First Lord and the accused herself dissented, the rest decreed her execution. Xbalanque's influence only grew. He cut through dragon lords, even besting the first, who deemed him worthy of an honorable death. Humans breached the volcano, storming the sacred city of Tollan. In a formal duel, Xiuhcoatl faced Xbalanque, a wary sovereign grasping at his last thrill of battle. At the peak of their battle, Xbalanque fell into phlogiston, paving the way for his rebirth as the Pyro Archon. Xiuhcoatl's body, on the other hand, shrank as his strength faded, his remains scattered beneath the volcano. If you've ever pondered the might of Xiuhcoatl in his prime, look no further than the vision of the Little One in Kukulkan. There, towering above the landscape, lies his sword and body, colossal as Apep and Asdaya at their peak. Xbalanque's empire rose upon a new land, yet was swiftly abandoned. Fearing this past draconic city was cursed land, he submitted to the sacred flame, seeking dominion over time itself in defiance of death. In his place, Xiuhcoatl rose, seemingly to change the fate of humans and dragons after their war had ended, but he had decided otherwise, and persecuted even the innocent Saurian. He inherited the weapon of Coquitao, Makana, ensuring his life would end in raging fire, giving way to the story of Natlan, which I talk about in this epic video right here. Number 7 will shock you. Returning to Tollan after its fall, we can notice that the floating islands harbor the same shape as Celestia. The false sky was breached, leaving jagged, star-shaped voids in the horizon, while the static effect upon the fissures in the sky mirror those seen during the Archon quest. Their pattern, eerily akin to a shape we are very familiar with, ties directly into my upcoming theory on the Men of Lithin. In their final endeavor to banish their eternal abyssal enemy, the bright minds of Tollan had completed Huitzilopochtli, a device that could only be operated by the chosen of dragons. This title represents both a Saurian blessed by the primal flame and a human who must guide the Saurian to their destiny. Huitzilopochtli has the power to erase and rewrite the very meaning of life. Natlan would be transformed into a land of pure phlogiston, the essence of primal fire, source of the world's heat, light, and a counterpart to the primordial sea. If the chosen of dragons activated the device, phlogiston would spill all over Teyvat, absorbing it and redefining life itself. A common misconception is that the Little One would merely become the new Pyro Sovereign. In truth, they would transcend such a title, becoming something beyond existence, capable of recalling life's meaning but never grasping it again. A literal god, incomprehensible and indescribable, beyond the powers of the heavenly principles and Nibelung. The abyss would be eradicated for billions of years, as if a new Big Bang had occurred, with the Little One at its core, forever trapped in the echoes of life's meaning. This rewriting effect would likely impact only the beings of Teyvat. As an outsider, the traveler might remain unaffected. Additionally, Kukulkan suggests that Paimon could also be immune. Yet another clue in the ongoing Paimon final boss agenda. This ties intriguingly to the story within Men of Lithin. A civilization came to discover the energy source known as Lithin, and, as a result, their technology flourished. Skyscrapers, flying shuttles, automated field tillers, made possible by Lithin, an element found incredibly deep underground and controlled entirely by the technocracy who had discovered this energy in a settlement known as Natlan. Interestingly, Council Record number B-CL-13097 refers to Tollan or parts of it as Natlan, aligning perfectly with its time period. The city's reliance on Lithin was absolute, but a faction known as the Unenlightened sought to dismantle this dependency, fearing the damage it caused to the land. During investigations into these rebels, an agent inhaled a concealed gas known as ignorance. The effect was devastating. Everything known became unknown, and the unknown became glaringly obvious. A horrifying truth was revealed. A human was not human at all. Instead, it was an abomination, sunken-faced, a body of bone and machinery, eyes like the void. When pointing at an enormous reptilian entity with a grotesquely large head, the reality was laid bare. This thing was a human. A real one. Those who thought themselves as humans were not what they believed. They were creations of an ancient race that once ruled the land, those original humans. After a great war, the air became toxic to these original beings, so they engineered a new race, biologically inverted from them. What was poison to one was breathable to the other. This new humanity was built with a singular purpose: to repeat the cycle. By overusing Lithin and polluting the world once more, the original beings could reclaim their land, and some had already returned, unseen, unless one had embraced ignorance. The link to Tollan is undeniable with its mentions of Natlan, but here's where it gets interesting. Upon the traveler's arrival, the automatons refer to humans in quotation marks. Just like in Men of Lithin, these dragon-shaped machines have bone-colored slender limbs and large heads, matching the description of the original beings in the story, who had lost a war, reflecting the one against the heavenly principles. Given Kukulkan's creation of human-dragon hybrids and dragon's extensive manipulation of humanity's evolution, it adds weight. Adding to this, the real forms of these beings is revealed through the gas known as ignorance, and as we know, Kukulkan and other dragons are able to shapeshift at will by manipulating the essence of phlogiston. The Men of Lithin had to dig exceedingly deep to reach Natlan for Lithin, where the dragons were, but from our perspective, since Tollan is inside the volcano, it is not deep at all, merely ground level, unless the digging started from the other side of the land. That's right, Khaenri'ah. Khaenri'ah's excavation would make sense of Natlan's perceived depth, not to mention, Tollan's false sky has been breached, but the markings left behind aren't typical of an abyssal invasion. This is what it would look like instead. Instead, they bear the same shape as the star crest of Khaenri'ah. Oblivious to the true nature of what they found, they drained phlogiston and named it Lithin. All the while the original beings who once thrived on this land awaited the inevitable. Humans of Khaenri'ah, unwittingly fulfilling their role, polluted their world with phlogiston. To the dragons of the ancient era, who drew their strength from the untainted primal flame, this substance was not mere fuel, but lifeblood that would allow them to regain their regular, gracious forms. I don't know what to say to sound cool from these deductions here, so hey. Oh, and speaking of hidden connections, did you know there's already a door leading to Khaenri'ah in-game? Despite being an open secret in my small but intellectually superior community, which you should definitely join, no character, not even Kaya or Arlecchino, ever acknowledges it. And that wraps up my very conclusive theory on Men of Lithin. Now onto the modern day details. The Fatui's involvement is evident, with the Torres' presence implied once more through research on the Kuuvahki, a project tied to the essence of the moons. If you missed the details, my previous video here covers how Dotore's plans intersect with Natlan. The head of this project is Madame Kuuvahki, who had become the target of a subtle assassination request. Warrant Officer Tatiana, eager for a promotion and return to Snezhnaya, is planning to eliminate Kuuvahki during her voyage home. However, this warrant officer should not be confused with the one from Long Night's Oath. It appears that this time, the Fatui aren't all on agreeing terms as to the research project regarding the moons. Additionally, Helka's notes mention relics in Nod-Krai with patterns similar to the one of the primeval source dragon mech that the Traveler and the Little One fought. She speculates that something massive dragged the bits of land that makes Nod-Krai toward Snezhnaya from Natlan, possibly explaining how this paradise emerged so suddenly in Teyvat's history. Frostmoon Scions in the region seem to hold a similar relic to the primeval source dragon mech, hinting at a deeper connection to be explored in the future. Finally, there is mention of a mysterious wanderer, dangerous enough that the Fatui actively avoid him. Here's my deduction. This individual has succumbed to sorcery. Having gazed into an abyss of boundless darkness, he gouged out his own eyes and now seeks specific gems, perhaps an ore called sulfurite, to replace them and shield him from the horrors he has seen. Despite combing through every available in-game text, I couldn't definitively identify him. I suspect this all builds toward an eventual reveal in Marijivari, and you already know I'll be covering it when the time comes. If you've stuck with me this long, I appreciate your support and I salute you. With sword in hand and wisdom in heart, Sir Eoth bids thee farewell.